This is a show with no particular niche, baby. It's always about hanging out. Maybe we'll laugh at some stuff, maybe we'll learn something new, but it's always about hanging out, me and you. Hi, hello, and welcome back, or perhaps for the first time, to That Thing with James, a podcast about nothing in particular. Yes, it's true. This show, much like the adopted tagline for the old television series Seinfeld, is about nothing. Really, it's nothing. I don't have anything scripted. I've just got a general idea. This seemed like a good idea when it occurred to me yesterday. I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know if it's going to flop. It was just a general idea of cartoons, of what I'm going to talk about today. Cartoons and how they can inform visual storytelling for live action. And I've got like one example I usually go to is a particular movie that I will mention down the line. I don't have any notes. I don't have any script. I don't have any guests. It's just me. If you're watching this, holy shit, I can't believe it. If you're listening to it, wow, I can't believe you're listening to it. I can't believe I'm still doing this show, but here I am. I'm still doing this. I don't know why. I keep doing it, and I've tried to not do it, and that didn't feel good. So I just got to go with whatever feels good, even if it feels like, why the hell am I going this way? So here I am, wondering why the hell I'm here, and why I'm even going to talk about cartoons informing visual live-action storytelling. But first, let's get some business out of the way, because that may help me dip my toes into this podcasting water. I have a whole bunch of bonus episodes, which will help like complete the Grandpa series that I somewhat recently finished doing. It's a very interesting story. It's a true story. It was like 20 parts, 21 parts, I think. You can get all of it if you help support the show at patreon.com/ThatThingWithJames. Support the show, and you will get access to all bonus episodes and all other bonus content for the other video series I had been doing until like the past few months, which I talked about a couple episodes ago, where it's just been very unpredictably chaotic. Lots of emergent things that needed tending to immediately. I'm just trying to get back into trying to get back into the mojo, back into the flow of things. And so I haven't recorded any new, what was the comedy series I was doing? What the fuck was it called? Minor Tensions by Dick Whistler. I haven't recorded a new one of those in a hot minute. But what I have been doing is trying to, hone in on a blurb for a book and also finish up a script for a short film. If it ever gets filmed, I don't know. All I know is I gave someone my word that I was writing a short film script, and it's closing in on the end finally. And it would have been done months ago, but perhaps, had it not been for so many emergencies, endless emergencies. Well, here we are. It's almost Thanksgiving. Let's see. Oh, this episode comes out the day after Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. What did you eat? Tell me in the comments or whatever. Before I forget, support the show, get access to bonus stuff, patreon.com/ThatThingWithJames. The audio listeners, this show's on YouTube. My channel is That Thing with James. Just search it, and it'll show up. And you can write in the comments of this episode telling me what you had to eat. And hell, that would give me something to talk about here on the show. Another way to contact me is through my show email, ThatThingWithJames@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at James J. Asher. And you can another place you can find me is TikTok. And I'm thinking about just closing down this other account that I created and just consolidating it into my one. But the current, as of right now, my TikTok handle is TTWJ Productions, and I have a subreddit r/ThatThingWithJames. You can share with me the Polish memes of bober kurwa, kurwa bober. That's Polish for oh fuck, a beaver. Bober is beaver or a beaver. Bober, BOBR, is how it's spelled in English, I guess, and then kurwa, KURWA. Kurwa is sort of an expletive exclamatory. So like, oh fuck, oh shit, oh damn, oh hell. Kurwa, kurwa, bober. That's a meme I recently learned about, which is fun. I like it. You can find it somewhere online. I think it's been around in Poland for a minute now. So yeah, all that business is done. So all right. Here's the thing. How did I get to thinking about this? And I've thought about this before. Cartoons informing visual storytelling, and maybe how you can find inspiration. If you are into filming things, you can find inspiration in cartoons. Now, I love cartoons. I've always watched cartoons. I've never stopped watching cartoons. Let's see, where do I go? Where do I go? Let's try to follow my train of thought to how I arrived here. Okay. I recently started rewatching, and I probably watch it like once a year, probably, Death Note. I love Death Note, and I'm almost done with the series. And then I looked up another show. I was like searching, if you like Death Note, then you will like this other anime, because I was looking for something similar. And one of the highly recommended ones is Code Geass. I think it's Geass, Geass. Code Geass was highly recommended, and I'm 3 episodes in. Now, that show released in the US around like 06, something like that, 2006. So the animation, like the character design, is very sort of that time. It's like kind of not quite as extreme, but kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh character designs, which is, it is what it is. Not my favorite kind of character design, but, it is what it is. But the story so far, there's some really out-of-pocket comments here and there that I really didn't expect. The way exposition is approached is very just sort of, it's like a afterthought. They just like stuff in random shit, and it's like, okay, I guess you have to, take it in stride, because I can see the makings of what hopefully will be a good story building up, a good narrative, lots of moral gray ground going on. And I guess in that aspect, I can see why it would be recommended. Of like, if you like Death Note, then you will like this. Death Note, I love. I've heard people say, and I've tried it. It didn't work out for me, but if you want to get someone into anime, a good one to start with would be Death Note. One of the reasons I love that cartoon or that anime, it's a cartoon, is it's so smart. It's kind of, it's silly. It's goofy how over dramatic it is. Like there's a meme of how dramatic Light Yagami does his homework and eats potato chips. There's this whole scene, and it's super intense of him just eating potato chips. But narratively, it works because there's a whole other thing going on here. He's eating potato chips and quote unquote doing his homework because he's trying to hide the fact that he's actually killing a bunch of people actively with this notebook where, if you haven't seen the show, if you're not familiar, the Death Note is this death notebook. That it's a notebook that these various gods of death, they're called Shinigami. These gods of death have a death notebook. And if you write a person's name into it and you keep in mind the person's face, if you write in their real name and keep in mind their face, that person will die. If you don't write how they die, I think they just automatically die of heart failure within 3 minutes, about 3 minutes or so. But you can also adjust. You can write down timing. You can write down behavior, cause of death, that sort of stuff. So you can kind of control elements a bit and maybe even control behavior a little bit with this death note. Now, in the cartoon, Light Yagami gets his hands on one of these death notes. I won't say how. I won't want to give everything away. But, and I'm not going to get into his entire motive and everything because that's part of the fun. But a big part of the fun is just there's this whole, at least for the first 2/3 of the series, and it's not a long show. There's only like 37 episodes or something. For the first 2/3, basically, there's this whole cat and mouse game between these two extremely intelligent and competent characters. And hubris ends up becoming a problem for one of them, but it doesn't necessarily, stop them right away. Usually your fall comes from hubris, but the fall doesn't come from hubris when you think it will. There's a lot of, what does that sound? There's a lot of, subverting expectation going on. But, I'm watching this, I'm loving it, and let's see, where do I go? Where am I going here? Cartoons informing live action visual storytelling. Okay. So this is a thought, hard jump here, hard jump. I'm getting jumbled. Let me take a drink of water and gather my thoughts real quick, and I'll try to reel this all together somehow. I don't know how, but I'm going to try. That's part of the fun of this podcast is me taking water breaks. Just a second. All right, here we go. Every art form has limitations. Those limitations vary depending on the mode of expression, the mode of communication. So for painting, just explicit painting. Let's not get too out in the weeds with this, but just flat out painting. Let's keep it simple. For painting, you paint on, say, a canvas of some sort, and that canvas has its borders. And you try to fill those borders with lines, points, shapes, and colors to create some sort of stimulus, some sort of visual and maybe even tactile stimulus, because you can look at something, if you are blessed with sight, you can look at something and without even necessarily touching it, just because hopefully you're also blessed with the sense of touch, with feeling, physical feeling, you can look at something and just sort of guess what it feels like. So you can look at the texture of the canvas, be it actual canvas or cardboard or a brick wall, and you can look at, if you get close enough, the peaks and valleys of the paint. Let's say it's some kind of paint being used. If it's being absorbed into like paper, that would be watercolor. Or if you're working with oil or vinyl paint, it will have peaks and valleys. It will have a certain texture you can see from the brush strokes, pressure applied, direction, speed of the brush, or whatever instrument is used to apply the paint or ink. It creates a certain texture, and that texture itself informs how light plays off the color or shapes or whatever. But there are limitations. So a painting can speak to you, but perhaps not audibly. And again, we're not getting too far out in the weeds here. We're not going to talk about synesthesia, where, you can hear colors and that sort of thing. Just trying to keep it simple here. So with the painting, you use a limited set of things. The paint itself isn't moving around. It's not making a sound itself, other than sounds bouncing off of it from the surrounding environment. Yet, whatever the artist does within the confines of the frame on the canvas is designed in some way, consciously or not, or just by luck, by happy accident, elicits an emotional response in the audience, in the viewer. And the same goes for any art form: written, heard, felt, perceived in some way. Art elicits an emotional response. You can break it down intellectually afterwards, or perhaps even during, but the initial thing you get is a sensation, a direct sensation, which then affects emotion, which then informs intellectual analysis. Okay? Now, what does this have to do with cartoons helping to inform visual, say, video or filmed cinematic storytelling in the live action sense, whether you're filming on celluloid or digital camera, okay? Cartoons are limited in a certain way, yet they can also express things that would be difficult, or depending on resources, being technology and or money available to produce certain effects on the screen and with the sound, more so on the screen. We're talking visual here, really. Live action has its limits until you get into, say, like CGI sort of stuff. But then that's sort of crossing the boundary into animation, okay? Animation is able to express things that perhaps could visually express things that often can only, or, historically could only be expressed with like just painting or with words, written or spoken. A head exploding. You look at a movie from the 40s or something like that, or the 50s, a head exploding would have been a difficult effect to pull off live action. You could get props. Hey, puppy. You can get props and costumes to design some kind of head that would explode, but it might kind of look like shit. And you get the camera just sort of static in a certain way. And it doesn't really express the kind of expression that you really want to communicate, because you're limited by the resources you have, technology, money, people, whatever the case may be. Cartoons are excellent because there's not really limits. You're not limited to what a human body can do. Even outside of like a head exploding, you're not really limited to what a human body can do and what a camera can or cannot do, depending on limited technology. So for a long time, cartoons were able to be a lot more, say, expressionist than what could be achieved with just, a camera and some people and a set. German expressionist films and stuff really tried to attempt certain thing. Old like Dada, D-A-D-A, old Dada films from the 20s, I think, 20s into 30s, also tried to express stuff that prior to would be more easily expressed through animation. So for example, going back to the scene I was talking about a bit ago in Death Note, where Light Yagami, the main character, is doing his homework and eating a bag of potato chips. And it gets really intense. The music is sweeping, the camera swoops in on everything, and it's just a guy eating a potato chip. But it is so dramatic. So dramatic. And it's really expressing not that... Hold on, dog's trying to jump down, and I got stuff in his way. There you go. It's really trying to express the intensity of what's going on. The fact that Light is, sure, he's doing his homework and eating potato chips, but he's also actively killing a lot of people while doing that stuff. Are you trying to jump down? Go ahead. Go ahead. There you go. Flying off into space, or what the fuck am I doing? Seeing a clock become, grow a face and move off, or the camera swoop in on something. I don't know, cartoons can achieve a certain feeling that's pretty difficult with live action stuff. But it's not impossible, and it's changing with technology and CGI and everything like that. But what's a good example here? What's a good example? I don't know if I'm doing any good, if I'm making any sense on this. I'm completely alone. I wish I had someone else to help me around with this stuff, but it's just me. It's me. You got to work with what you have. Limits of expression here, limits of mode here. A good example I like to think of, one that always comes to mind, is Scorsese is amazing at expression through visual communication of camera and the lady. I never remember her name, but he works with this editor. He's worked with this woman for decades now, I believe. But it's this one woman he works with who edits his films, and he sits there and they work it out together. But Martin Scorsese, always does a great job of expressing and eliciting certain emotions, certain feelings, just with the camera that you don't get with your usual static talking head, chop, talking head, talking head, talking head. My favorite example that I always think of for what I'm trying to talk about here is The Departed. The Departed. It is... Oh, can you hear Cosmo drinking water? Oh, fuck. I have to wait for him to stop. Hold on. As I was trying to say, The Departed is the most apt example I always think of when I think about this, and I've been thinking about this for years. The way the camera is, I forget, it's like hyper expressionist kind of a thing. Because when the story is amping up, there's a lot of tension and speed and urgency going on. And there's only so much you can do, like on a camera, like just as an actor. Only so much you can do with like just the sound, like with the music. Like anytime the Joker appears in the Dark Knight movie. Was it The Dark Knight? I think it was. Heath Ledger's the Joker. Anytime it's this really slow, dissonant, draw on the violin that creates this dissonant, tense sound with the audio. That's to elicit an emotional response that you want the audience to have, that you're trying to express the characters are feeling in the presence of the Joker, of like, this is wrong. Something is wrong. I'm in danger right now. The sound of the violin is to cause that tension with the audience, which then amps up the, late Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker. But in terms of just visuals, in terms of camera, Scorsese is a fucking master at directing this sort of stuff. And I know he plots it all out. Like I've read interviews with him and shit when he talks about this stuff. Like he has it pictured in his mind. I don't know if he's a fan of cartoons or not. I wouldn't be surprised if he is. Oh my God. Cosmo, do you want to go to bed? Do you want to go to bed? I hate putting the dog in the cage while I do this. But I also can't really do this if he gets up. Catch 22. This is part of what I'm fucking talking about. I can't do a goddamn thing. Anyway, limits. You gotta work with what you have. In The Departed, there's a lot of intensity going on, a lot of urgency going on. And that is expressed with the camera work. There is a visual language happening. He puts X's, that's used a lot. I think he got that from old noir films from the 40s or something. If someone is about to die, you will see an X on them in The Departed. And it's usually some kind of shadow forming an X, or maybe some kind of architecture somewhere will be an X around that person. I don't know if you knew this. I don't know if you've even seen the film. But when someone is about to die, there is an X on them or near them on the screen. That's a way of visual storytelling that sort of subliminally or subtly suggests that something's about to happen, that you may not pick up on immediately, or you may pick up on subsequent things, or it may just inform you on a unconscious level somehow. But he does a lot of, the camera in The Departed does a lot of sweeping in. Like I know there's this scene between Baldwin and I think Marky Mark, and maybe another character, and they're having this back and forth. And you could do, and a lot of productions still just do this, where it's like talking head on the screen, another talking head on the screen, another talking head on the screen. You could do that. Or you could place the camera in such a way there where if someone is dominating a conversation, you angle the camera so that the person dominating the conversation appears higher up in the screen, or perhaps larger than the other person who's, say, losing the argument. But in The Departed, it doesn't just do that. It's these people trying to make a fucking point in the conversation. It's these Boston guys trying to make a point in the conversation. And instead of the camera just being planted flat, it swoops in on them, swoop in, I got something to say. Whoosh, swoop in, I got something to say. It's very kind of cartoony, the way the camera moves around. It's a lot of hyperactive, a lot of movement, and a lot of stimulus. And it's not just like shaking the camera. That's a really cheap way, I feel. It's just a really cheap way to create the illusion of action and intensity, is just shaking the camera. You see that in a lot of like other stuff when there's a fight, a war or something, or a horror movie, just a lot of shaking the camera. Or even those like mockumentary type shows like The Office, with the zoom in on the face, the camera, it just like over exaggerates this handheld camera zoom in on the face kind of a thing. I never liked that from the beginning when that was like a newer sort of trend. I thought that was just sort of cheap and lazy, really. Personally, that's just my personal thing. But with like The Departed, it's very intentional. It's very sort of a mathematical approach to create this very expressive effect that you used to not be able to do with cameras when they weighed 300 pounds or so and had to be planted, and you couldn't really do that. So with The Departed, you get a lot of that stuff of like the camera is placed up under a clock. Like if someone is, running out of time or something, it like kind of swoops in on their forehead, looking at them on a downward angle. And then you look up at the clock, and the clock is fucking huge on the screen. I feel that's like a very cartoonish sort of approach. And I don't mean cartoonish in any sort of like a derogatory, deriding sort of a way. I say that as like a charm, a compliment, because cartoons for a long time have been able to do that. With, animation, you're able to draw stuff that's very difficult to do, or perhaps you might not even think of initially if you just have a camera and real people and a real setting. So if you're into filming stuff and if you want to get a really good idea of like a direction, like how to direct very expressively, I say watch a lot of cartoons, break it down, because these are people who are working with just a blank screen, a blank page, and they are drawing a series of images that become expressive. It's just 2D images, flat 2D lines that are presented in such a way, progressively presented in a way so that the flat, static image seems to come to life and has movement, and it has a certain sort of direction. There's a sort of heightened expression happening to get, say, like a talking bird to elicit the same kind of emotion you would get from, say, like the illusion of a death of a baby on screen with like real people. I could do this like other podcasts, other quote unquote creators, content creators. I could write a script for this show, get better cameras, a better lighting setup, a better set. But I have limited resources, and that includes time. I don't have time to sit down and, script out this fucking show like that. And it's just not how I roll in this particular medium. So I don't know if I've done a good job. I rambled a lot. I don't know if I made any goddamn sense at all. But I can tell you what will make sense is the script that I'm working on. I'm going to read it in the bonus episode because I'm done. I'm done with this episode. I went off the rails. I don't know how this went at all. But yeah, if you're into filming stuff, if you're into the live action art of visual storytelling, watch cartoons. If you're looking for some kind of inspiration, some kind of new information to help you inform how you can express stuff, look to cartoons. I think you'll find a wealth of inspiration in them, especially in anime. But yeah, on this week's bonus episode, I'm going to be reading from what I have of my script thus far. If you want to check it out, help support the show at patreon.com/ThatThingWithJames. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. I feel very poorly about this episode, but here it is. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to catch you next time. Bye.